Okay, we're going to get started with technology. I got to tell you, I'm not a tech guy, but to me, this is one of the most important panels. Given where the industry's going, given what I hear from advisors all the time, and when I think of technology, I think about three things. Efficiency is number one, enhancing the client experience, and bringing more money to the bottom line. That's what I think of technology as a business person. But with that, why don't we go up and down the panel? We'll start with Sean, and a little bit of your background, little bio, and what you're going to talk about, and then I'll come back to you.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Sean Sandy. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Syntax Data. My background has been primarily in technology. I got my PhD in computer science at the University of Washington, did your traditional tech stint at Microsoft and a number of startups before deciding that the best way to make my impact on the world is to help a group of people figure out how to classify companies to the most precise detail possible, and then figure out how to use that data to power investments, research, et cetera. So I'm going to be talking about a direct indexing platform that uses technology to allow anyone to build indices at scale that are highly customized and highly diverse.
Joel?
Joel Bruckenstein. I'm president of Technology Tools for Today, known as T3. I wrote my first book on advisor technology a quarter century ago. I've been consulting advisory firms on technology ever since, also technology firms that serve advisors. I run the only pure technology conference in the industry for RIAs, and I also run, in conjunction with Bob Veras and his company, the best tech survey in the industry. We survey around 3,000 to 5,000 advisors every year, ask them what technologies they're using, and ask them how they like them. And that data is free on our website, and I'll tell you about that later.
Thank you. Jacob?
Jacob Ingram, CEO of Defiance Analytics, and we help asset managers target retail, self-directed, and institutional investors. We've marketed in the last 5 years over 200 different ETFs, so we've seen the gambit of what makes ETF marketing campaign effective, and that's what we do for our clients.
I'm Alan Reed. I like to say fintech before fintech. So I worked with SunGard, created mean variance optimization tools for broker-dealers, consulting platforms, spent 10 years working with Markowitz on that, created a fund family called Forward, came up with an idea for creation units. My family office guy didn't like it, but this guy Blake sitting next to me did. He started a little thing called iShares, and it took off. And then I also created something called Liquid Alts, and actually were the first to put in hedge fund strategy, leverage strategies into mutual funds. So on the ICI Board of Governors, working group at the Fed after '08, created something now called Iconic, and basically creating an asset out of a liability, what most people think of proxy voting. So basically creating value out of proxies and allowing people to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. I'll leave it at that.
Terrific.
Thank you. My name is Peter Weinstein. I work at ICE, the Intercontinental Exchange. Essentially, I'm one of the sales guys for our wealth management desktop, which is used by a lot of advisors in the field that like to look at current market prices in real time. And I can talk more about it later. I was going to do a demo, but that's not going to happen, which is fine.
Well, if you insist and you slip me a few dollars, maybe I will. So as I said earlier, I think technology, based on what I see when I'm talking to advisors, not only across North America, but really around the country, the number one complaint that I hear from advisors, almost universal, and I've been in front of about 45,000 advisors, regardless what firm, doesn't matter. Wirehouse, independent, family office, my technology stinks. Not necessarily true, but technology. So what I'd like to hear from you is, what are you seeing in terms of what advisors are valuing when it comes to technology, and what do you think is a tool that an advisor should be using? Anything you can shed light. And that question is across, everybody's going to get a chance to answer the same question.
Yeah,
And hopefully it's not going to be the same answer.
Well, I've worked with a lot of firms as well, and I think the first thing to be very clear is a lot of those advisors are right, but it also depends on the vertical, okay? Because there's a real distinction between what family offices do, what wirehouses do, what IBDs do, and what independents do. For family offices, to use an example, they look at technology as an expense, strictly as an expense, because they don't really see the value in it. And so what you get what you pay for. And so in a lot of cases, their technology is really bad. At the other end of the spectrum, I would say the independents have excellent tools at their disposal. The problem is, do they all know how to build a tech stack to put the appropriate things together to get the results that they want? And then the third thing I would just add is a lot of advisors don't even understand the capabilities of their current software. So in many, many cases, they have really good tools that have a lot of capabilities that they're not using because they've never taken the time to really train on the software. I'll leave it at that.
Can I just want to hop in
Go
there. On some level, a lot of the problems that advisors deal with technology are the problems that we all deal with technology, right? What Joel just described can go for almost any industry and for any stack, right? People find tools that they're comfortable with, and then when new people come into that organization, they kind of are forced into that mold, and changing that tech stack, modifying that tech stack, changing those workflows become very, very difficult. And so I think one of the things that we as technologists need to be focused on, I think there are actually two things we need to be focused on. Number one are integrations. How do we make that adoption curve as low as possible? How do we help people migrate into new tools or new workflows? That's number one. And number two is usability. Like, simply have empathy for the people that are using your products. Like, just, seriously, like
Which no developers do.
Present company excluded. Like, no, simply have empathy for the people that are using your products, right? They are giving you the grace of using technology that you've constructed. Think about their experience, think about their needs, and be responsive to it. You don't know everything, and they will tell you what's wrong. Listen to them.
Yeah, I think seeing the value, like you mentioned, is important. And most of our clients are asset managers, so for them, they only care about one thing, right? AUM, and they don't really care how it's done. So we sort of use a variety of tech stacks and have that integrated and have learned which are the best stacks to get the results, be it, leveraging the compliance minefield of influencers and finding them and creating those interviews with the asset managers and the portfolio managers to talk to the influencers so they can talk to the broader audience of the influencers, I think is one of the examples. But the clients just want it done for them, right? They don't want to learn. They don't want the adoption curve, and it's difficult to get people to learn something new on their time, on their dime, so essentially, because their time is their dime, and that can make it tough with a tech stack. So what we try to do, at least, is just do it for the client and get them the results, be it meetings with advisors or the views on the interviews. But I totally get what you're saying in regards to seeing the value. The client has to see that value in the tech stack, and it's nice that we have someone here who's appreciative of the client's experience.
Thank you.
So one of the challenges I found, at least at Morgan Stanley, was that we were building something for tens of thousands of people. Well, if I'm one of those people, one of those teams, I want to be different than the other 10,000 people. So I've got to step out a little bit. I've got to find something that's meaningful to my client themselves, and I've got to deliver it to the client. In other words, I can run all these great analysis tools, but if the client doesn't understand it, it doesn't help me, right? It's like I need to latch onto the client. I need to differentiate myself in the business.
Alan, just so I understand, when you say the client, you're talking about the end client.
The end client, right?
Okay.
Yeah. When
So
the
you need,
mom,
you mean
pop-
you as the consultant technology guy need to understand the end client. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that whatever I have as an advisor, it needs to be meaningful to my client if I'm going to deliver it to them. I need something that's going to attach to them. I need Velcro, right? I need to make sure they're not going somewhere else. They see that I'm different. And then if I can differentiate myself, I can fees and performance. That's not the number because I've got a relationship and I've earned their trust. So that's what we deliver with proxy voting, where we can identify their actual values. We can deliver that for them. And so when you start looking at BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, and then there's a little company called One Fund that we work with as well, but you can basically deliver those things in today's SMAs, but tomorrow's ETFs, and deliver differentiation. So what we're seeing today is billion-dollar foundations moving money like that because they want to have a voice, they want to have their proxies voted, they want to know they're not paying some guy to show up for board meetings who doesn't show up.
So I'm going to come back to you with a follow-up question, and the follow-up question after I go to you with, you said you demonstrate how they're delivering value. So I want to understand that. I want you to go a little bit deeper, but go ahead.
No, super quick. My end client is the advisor. So I'm involved in migration exercises to replace an incumbent, a good provider, I'm sure, with my tool stack. And I don't see the end client that you see. I'm dealing completely with the advisor. The pain of change, every advisor loves change, I know that. I don't hear that often at all. So
But
my
just
job,
to challenge you a little bit, there's, to Alan's point, I mean, obviously, there's no downside getting to know the end client. You're able to provide maybe more value for the advisor, right?
correct. But my job is really to provide a market data
So
terminal.
talk briefly, because that's really the next question I want to ask everyone. What are you actually providing for the advisor?
So it's a market data terminal. So think quotes, news, and charts. ICE is a very large organization, tickers ICE on the New York Stock Exchange, which we own. But we're providing the GUI that people see, launched typically from another platform that a clearing company would provide, or a brokerage firm would provide, or a bank would provide, launches our service. And then what's actionable about it is the fact that advisors can see their client portfolios in it in real time, getting updated as the market ticks. So that's what I provide, a solution for the advisor to have conversations with their clients. Some people, 95% of the, they don't use 95% of what we provide. They just have a complete quote chart, which is sad because we're putting in data from the likes of FactSet or ETF Global for their profiles information, or Dow Jones News, but they just see a stack of tickers blinking, which it is what it is. But that's what I provide the clients, well,
Okay.
my firm.
Alan, one, who do you work with primarily? Do you work with the independent channel, the wirehouse, and what is your, in essence, product solution? What do you do for the advisor, specifically?
We're a tech layer, so we sit and analyze proxy voting, and we pump it out to whoever wants to buy it. So whether it's a mutual fund that is looking to enhance their proxy voting process, whether they want an ETF that wants to deliver that proxy voting modeling down to them, they can deliver it in models that they understand. So compared to today, you have an option. If you're at Vanguard, you can vote with management, you can vote with Vanguard, you can vote with ISS, you can vote with Glass Lewis. That doesn't mean anything to pretty much anybody in this room as far as a differentiation. What we do is we allow them to design it. They could vote with the NAACP, they could vote with the Catholic Church, they could vote with with Sierra Club. They can vote with people they actually trust, or they can design something themselves that meets the advisor or the firm's process in identifying needs and values and profiling of a client. So the point there is that if you go back to it, ultimately, whether it is Benjamin Graham or Warren Buffett, they made their name by proxy voting. They made their name by actually going out and using their ownership. There's an asset that's always been a pain in the tail for most of us in the industry, because clients are always calling about some stupid proxy. I don't know, just make it go away. And that's the last thing, is that clients are, I just was talking to a rep in Laramie, Wyoming, and he came back, he's like, I never know what happened. I just called, and my clients thought that we got hacked because somebody was calling them and saying they knew enough information, and they were asking for a proxy vote. But the advisor didn't even know what it was. So we help turn those things off by auto voting.
Terrific. Thank you for that. Jacob, tell us a little bit more about what you do. Get a little bit more granular.
Sure. So we help new ETF issuers and existing ETF issuers target their investor base, be it retail for the new issuers who are trying to raise that first 50 to 100 million, pre-platform approval, right? We make sure they get in front of the right people, RIAs, retail. We've got some clients here in the space that we help them position their product. For example, if they're doing the last year, I'm sure you've seen the assets flowing into the covered call strategies and option income strategies. We help them position their specific ETF to be successful in the competitive landscape, if you're not first mover, everyone knows that in the ETF space, if you're first mover, probably going to get, and the product has legs, you're going to get the majority of the assets. But if you're not first mover, you really have to think about how you're positioning your fund against the competitive landscape. And with over 1,000 ETFs launched this year, the noise is getting louder, and you've got to find a way to penetrate through to get to your investor base and make your product stand out. And marketing is one of it. Cold emails is another. Influencer marketing is another. Identifying who's visiting your site is another. And we provide all of these pieces and build them into one offering where we provide a holistic marketing approach, because the biggest problem in the ETF landscape is attribution. Knowing where the funds are flowing from, right? The brokerages have that data. They're not going to give it to you. Right? Maybe I should talk to him. He's got the relationships.
Right.
But that's what we do for our clients. And we see someone has an interview. A few days later, we start seeing the views tick up on the interview. Then the flows come in. We go, okay, this is working on YouTube. Let's try to find more people with a similar followership. So that's how we work with our clients. And we provide that service as a done-for-you service based on the experience of what we've seen work and not work. And we optimize accordingly.
Terrific. Joel, it seems to me you work with a lot of advisors across different channels, but primarily the independent channel.
And somewhat in the IBD channel as well.
Okay, so same question. Get a little bit more granular. Why would I hire Joel, whether I'm the firm or whether I'm a large team or whether I'm just an advisor? Maybe if I'm just an advisor, sole practitioner, I may not be able to afford you. But what do you do when you come in? What's your process, and what are you trying to do for them?
Right, so people hire us for a variety of reasons, right? Sometimes it's just selection. They're looking to change some piece of software and they want help selecting it. And usually when we have those engagements, we find other things that are much more pressing problems, quite frankly. So a typical engagement would be hiring us to come in just to review your whole tech stack, tell you based on what your client base is and the type of client you're trying to attract in the future, whether you have the appropriate tools or whether you need to make changes.
Yeah, so before you go any further, because otherwise I'll forget,
Please.
let's assume you're dealing with a larger independent firm.
Yep.
Will you be able to make recommendation and they actually can make those changes even though they're with, I'm not going to mention the firm,
Sure.
but they have 15,000 advisors. You still can make recommendations that they could implement on a local level.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of independents with 15,000 today, so it's a little bit extreme. That would be more like LPL. But anyway.
I said I wasn't going to mention their
But I
name,
did.
but you're off by about 4,000.
Okay, but the point is, yes, we can make recommendations which they can implement, or they can have us implement. So primarily, we try and recommend off-the-shelf solutions, because that's usually the most cost-effective way to do things. But if it's really necessary, we'll also build custom software for firms, and we've done that a couple of times over the last several years with absolutely amazing results with very new and more modern technologies than most people in the industry are using today. The other thing we do is we consult with technology firms, because sometimes they have trouble understanding what advisors' needs are, to help them create what we call the easy button, make it that seamless experience so they don't have to go through a big training program to use the technology. And as I said, we run the biggest trade show in the industry, primarily for independent RIAs, but it's also where breakaways or potential breakaways are coming, because they're going to have to build their own tech stack, and they want to try and figure it out and get a little head start before they actually break away. So we get about 1,000 people at that conference every year. We have about 100 vendors. So if you're shopping for software, there's probably no better place in the industry to come. And then I mentioned earlier the tech survey. We do an annual tech survey, Inside Information and T3. We typically survey between 3,000 and 5,000 advisors. We ask them what they're using, so we know, who's got market share. And we also ask them how much they like or dislike what they're using, and interesting results there every year.
Terrific. Sean, tell us a little bit deeper about what you do, and again, the more granular you can get, the better.
Oh, don't make me go too granular.
I think
stop
you
it
did
if I
say you
get
have
too
a
low.
PhD, right?
I can get
Maybe, well, I'll take that back.
in the
then.
weeds.
I take that back. No, go ahead.
All right, so I'm actually part of an incredible team that's been building a platform for RIAs to define their own custom indices, their own direct indices, build them, and then deploy them. And so, I talked a lot about user empathy in my last time on the mic. And really what we've been saying to ourselves is, how can we simplify this process in building an index, building an investment model? And so what we allow the advisor to do, or really anyone to do, is to answer a number of questions, the same questions that any index provider would ask you when building an index. What's your starting universe? What's your index objectives? If you want a factor index or a thematic index, well, it's literally 15 questions. And at the end of that question, you hit go. And what you're going to get is a 5-year back test. You're going to get all the index levels that allow you, and all the stat packages that you would get in a standard index provider. We'll also provide a rule book. One of the things that maybe will come up a little later is the use or non-use of AI. I have a bias here, and part of my bias is that when it comes to investing, when it comes to questions that you need to have answers to, while generative AI techniques are interesting, what you really want is transparency, determinism, and repeatability. And so what we're able to do is create a rule book, a 25-page document that says, here are all the decisions that you made, here are the results of that, here are the implications of that, and it's a rule book that will go alongside the index and will pass regulatory muster. The last thing you'll get, if you're happy with that index and you hit deploy, is that index will be pushed into a production engine, and you will get daily files that were sent either via email, via FTP, via API coming up pretty shortly, that you can use to execute and trade on that index. And so really what we are is a solution that allows someone to, or an advisor or an advisor to say, what is the type of investment vehicle that I want? Create that vehicle quickly, customize it for their client, and then put it into production and be able to execute on it.
That was the PhD version. I would phrase it a little differently. My opinion of what they're trying to do is to really disrupt a lot of the people that were on the stage earlier today. Essentially what they can do is create a portfolio that mimics any factor ETF, any ESG ETF, any broad-based index ETF, and do it at a fraction of the cost that the ETF providers can do it at.
Well, if the last panel wants a dividend yield index, I can help them out. Just find me at the break. We can do it in about 5 minutes.
So Joel, I'm kind of curious, like you've seen all this technology, you've seen people come, with all sorts of folks bring to your conference. For folks in the audience here that are, I think it's mostly advisors, they probably don't get to decide for a LPL or an XYZ or whoever. So what's the best way for them to adopt, and maybe all of our platforms? But technology is great because it scales. But to differentiate yourself in the market, you want to be first, and you want to find something that's relevant to your own practice, not to what the home office wants you to do. So how do you do?
I think it's a complex question. I think there's a few parts to it. If you're at a wirehouse, you're going to probably have no choice whatsoever. So if you're at a wirehouse, I can't really help you. If you're in an IBD, they have different policies on this. Some of them have a number of approved products, not one in every vertical. So there is some level of choice. And if you're a large enough RIA and you have a couple of other friends who are large RIAs on that platform, demand from their best RIAs gets things on platforms. So the best way to get new tech on the platform is to ask the head office, and not ask, demand. And if enough people demand it, it happens. As far as differentiation goes, a lot of the best products, and you could use Syntax as an example, allow you to put your own personality and your own beliefs in the product, right? They can literally create thousands of portfolios that are unique for every client if you want to. I'm not suggesting that everybody necessarily do that, but it's possible to do it. I was very interested in the previous panel when the guys from iShares and Bernstein were going back and forth on models, because I think that kind of touches on your point as well. And I think there's a little bit of truth in what both of they say. And again, I deal with lots of RIAs. I used to run my own RIA. Nobody wants a cookie cutter, right? But if you have small portfolios, let's say $100,000, you're not really adding much alpha by customizing it. So cookie cutter or using models, I would say for a small portfolio is fine. When you get to the high net worth and the ultra high net worth, they don't want to be in the model everybody else is on, to your point. So you got to figure out a way to customize it and also offer some value-added services. It's not just about investments, right? What else do you do for the client that adds value? Is it really deep estate planning? Are you helping them not just with their life insurance needs, but their PNC needs? I mean, these are the kind of things that differentiate you as an advisor from everybody else. And if you're not doing anything to differentiate yourself, you're not going to have the client for very long.
I mean, to me, the big thing there is just, you're talking about things that clients care about, right? You know, and so much of the stuff we talk about is like French or something, or it's in, you know, Greek or something like that, right? People don't really care. They want to know that when they leave the office, or, you know, that it's taken care of, right? That they don't have to worry about it, and that they can trust that advisor.
Well, people who go into advisors are delegators, right? They can do most of this stuff themselves, but they don't want to do it, or they feel that you can do it better. So, hey, you got to do it well, and you got to do it better, and it better be a seamless, wonderful experience.
Yeah. It better be, but it's not always, right? We know
didn't say
that.
it
That's
was
why
always.
the top. The next question, and then I want to open it up because I want to give the audience an opportunity to ask as many questions as possible. I believe that the independent channel really started to accelerate about 20 years ago because of technology, right? The cost of technology came down. I'm just making up a number, I have no idea, but maybe with $100,000, you can get 90% of what I was getting at XYZ firm.
Probably a hell of a lot less 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
but the bottom line is you were able to accelerate the growth. What's going to be the next wave from a technology standpoint that will accelerate even more growth in productivity, maybe more breakaways? What do you guys see? Look, I'm asking you guys to look into the crystal ball, and if you want to talk about AI, you can talk about AI, but I'd like to hear from those that maybe have a little bit more expertise.
I'll let them go first, and then I'll hit on whatever they miss.
Okay, sounds good. You're so generous. Go
All I
ahead.
can say from my firm's perspective, we're just about in every single asset class under one umbrella, and we're building it all into a cohesive platform for use by any type of advisor on any channel anywhere in the world. And think about it, we have the New York Stock Exchange, we own so many futures exchanges across the planet, we have chatting capability, we have so many different assets under our one organization, and things that we don't have ourselves, we outsource that. I mean, there are a lot of competitors that do the exact same thing, but I think we do it fairly well. We're a really good technology player.
Alan?
I go where no one else does. Proxies, you know, values.
So yeah, I mean, yours, in fairness, it's more of a specialty situation that,
It is. I mean, well, but think about technology. Proxies have always been the back office, mainframe-based platform. So what does that mean? It means that it's all batch process. There's no information. Nobody's got any tools on it. And oh, by the way, the SEC just required NPX filings, which basically means that anybody who's running over $100 million is supposed to be filing with the SEC how they're voting proxies. And so when and what does the SEC do after they require the data? They do sweeps.
I learned more about proxy today than I did in my 40 years in the business, just so you know.
Yeah, and when you think about it, when you look at next gen, these next generations where all this wealth transfer is going, they're all voting proxies, but they're used to transparency. And so where boomer generation could care less, next gen is like, they're focused on impact. They're focused on how their values are getting reflected. And so even if I'm wrong in only 10%, that's 10% that nobody else is touching. So what we're seeing, again, is billion-dollar foundations that people go into and realize that their current advisor has got their money working against their very mission statement. Want to guess how happy they are? They move like that. So really what we're doing is helping people understand and talk to the clients about what's important to them. So that can be foundations, it can be multi-generations, it can be big clients but if you go next step is AI, right? And if we have the data and no one else has that data, then who's in the driver's seat to do prediction? You can talk about Sharpe ratio, you can talk about Sortino ratio, whatever, downside capture, it's all great. Doesn't mean anything to most clients. Values do.
Terrific. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're constantly looking for solutions to do things that were done manually by leveraging AI. So there's new companies out there today. I don't know if you guys have heard of them. There's Daisy AI. They use MSCI data to produce content, right? You've heard of them. I see the future outside of what already exists today is the compression or consolidation in the time it takes to get content approved by compliance. Everyone has to wait 72 hours minimum to get that done. Is anyone happy about that? No. So, and if you want to rush it, you've got to pay a premium for that. I see that as an ideal use case to be disrupted, and we're working on that internally as well. So whatever the use case might be, I think there's always a tool that can solve the problem. I think we're a long way away from finding something that can solve all those problems holistically, but I think we should look closely to tackle one by one.
Yeah.
I'm going to pick up on a thread that Alan and Joel both touched on, which is as the technology move forward, as we're moving forward, what you're going to see is that the expectation of your clients are going to change, right? One of the things that Joel said was, the high net value individual doesn't want the same thing that everyone else has, right? At $100,000, you can give them a cookie cutter. At $100 million, you can't. Well, it's going to be the case that you can't give the cookie cutter to the $100,000 person. You can't give the cookie cutter to the $10,000 person. So people are going to want the type of transparency that they get today in their food choices, in their consumer choices. They're going to want it in their investment choices. And so the ability to customize at scale, I think, is key to the revolution that we're moving into. And you're going to see that permeate all parts of the industry. And how we get there and how we solve that problem is going to be a collection of solutions, including AI, including computation, including big data. But at the end of the day, somebody is going to want to say, look, here are my values, here's my expectations, here's what I want. What's my product? How cheaply can I get it? And the RAA and the advisor that can respond to that is going to be the RAA, the advisor that gets that business.
So before, Joel, before you wrap up, because you just made me think of something, how many people from a wirehouse in the audience? Wirehouse. No one from the wirehouse. Good. How about the independent world? How about everyone else? But how many advisors? How about a show of hands? How many advisors in the room? Financial advisor.
Yes.
Yeah, that includes independent advisor. How many people, maybe I should restate that. How many people give advice to clients the retail clients? Okay. Okay. What you reminded me of, and you guys are the experts, so tell me if I'm wrong. It seems to me, if you're at a wirehouse, they want to stay in a much narrower lane in terms of client offering, right? So it's much harder to differentiate yourself, where technology could be a big differentiator at the independent world.
Yep.
So, Joel, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and
Okay.
then we're going to open it up to some Q&A from the
So
audience.
this is probably about the 30th conference at least I've been to this year. And there's one topic that comes up at every one that's an RIA conference, and that's organic growth. Organic growth in the RIA space the last year or two has been pretty pathetic. It's in the low to mid single digits. All the growth has been coming from inorganic, basically M&A, and the growth in the market, right? So, what's the challenge? The challenge is growth. And how do you scale?
Yeah, by the way, I'm going to give you a factual, in terms of how bad growth is, 70% of advisors in the United States, net assets are negative, not positive, obviously taking out market appreciation. That's how bad it is. So only about 30% of advisors in the country are net up assets year over year, taking out the market.
So how do you fix that? You fix that in two ways, right? One we touched on, and Sean just touched on it, is personalization, and it's personalization at scale. And the other one is office efficiencies. The advisors today need to be able to handle more clients than they currently handle, but handle them just as well as they're handling them today. So what's the solution for that? It's technology, obviously. And so what are the technologies that are going to drive that? The biggest one, obviously, is AI. But the problem is most advisory firms are not fully prepared to take advantage of AI today because the fuel for AI is data. And you need good data and you need standardized data. And I've been in all their offices, and they don't have good data, and it's not standardized. So step one is really cleaning up your data and finding providers that you can help.
How long do you think that's going to take?
It's going to take a good few years. So I think, what you're going to see is you're seeing the low-hanging fruit today, right? What are the growth companies in AI in our space? It's crazy, but they're note-taking companies. Why? Because you can plug that in today, and there's no compliance challenges, and it's easy to plug into your CRM. They already are integrating with the CRM, and it doesn't really mess with anything else. But in order to really get the kind of rich data you want on your clients, to be able to do deeper dives with your clients and personalize, yes, you're going to need to modernize your tech stack, and almost everybody needs to do that.
Let me jump in there because I think this is the opportunity for advisors. And my game has always been use technology before compliance figures it out.
Right.
So if you think about that right now, is that you've got data on your clients, you've got emails on your clients. There's a number of AI apps that will help you write an email. So say you want to talk about one of those fancy ETFs that just were on the stage or something like that. It will send a different email to every one of your clients based on the past way you address that client, past language formatting. And so in doing that, you no longer are doing a solicitation across, you're not doing a bulk email, you're doing each one customized. So as you start to think about using AI, whether it's note-taking or CRM or just like half the apps on your phone, there's a lot of ways that compliance isn't necessarily integrated quite yet. So if I were an advisor, I would be using that cool stuff, not on the trading side, but anything that they hadn't gotten to yet and screwed up, I would be using those technology tools.
I would be a little careful with that. First of all, I agree with you, but let me put a few guardrails around that, right? You don't put your client's personal information into ChatGPT, because ChatGPT saves that, and that's a violation of just about every reg out there. I don't care who's regulating you. So, if you have your own version of ChatGPT, right, which is closed off from the internet, that's fine. So I do think there's a lot of things you can do with ChatGPT, but if you're going to use those kind of tools, just be really careful about personally identifiable information. That is a real hotspot with all the regulators, okay? And if you're going to do some mass personalization, also read what you're sending out first, because all of these tools are not yet perfect, and while they're usually good 90% of the time, years ago what I used to tell people who were using voice to text, they would advertise it's 99% right. And I said, you know what that means? There's 2 errors on every single page. So 99% is not good enough. So you still need to do some human interaction, and you still need to monitor it. But yes, I like the way you think about it.
Thank you. We're going to open it up to Q&A. You guys, I'm sure, I think this is a great opportunity because you guys are experts. So go ahead, Pasquale. You don't have a mic? Hold on.
Let's get him.
Mic him up.
Why don't you throw it to him? He can catch it.
Okay, I am an independent advisor, and I'm probably the minority in the room. But my view is technology is either our friend or our foe as an advisor. More importantly, as a fiduciary, I want to service my clients as best as possible. My typical clientele are going to, let's say, is between 55 and 80. They're the ones that have the money. Let's call it the baby boomers. One of the more important questions the client asks is, do I have enough to retire on? And secondly, what sources or accounts am I taking the money as cash flow every month in order to maintain at least the lifestyle they work so hard to achieve? So with that being said, over the years, I've had many retirement plan software companies demo the product, and I've used them. And I can tell you that from the client's perspective, when you deliver these reports that are 30, 40, and 50 pages long, nobody really understands them, and the advisor spends hours implementing or inputting all the data into these software companies. So since you're all technology people up there, I would embrace the disruption of that industry, make it user-friendly for the advisor to input the data, and make it super easy for the clients to understand if they have enough, or whatever their magic number is. And that's very, very critical for the people that are at 60 years to say 67 years of age. That's all. Thank you.
Well, I don't disagree with that, and I used to create those large reports when I was an RIA. I think there is much better software out there today that does a much better job of explaining things. I personally don't think there's any reason to be printing reports at all anymore. There's software out there that you can do interactive presentations with the client, either in the office or by Zoom, and I think you can get to a point where you should be able to explain everything to them in 15 minutes. If not, you probably need some training on the software.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, guys. Thank you very much. First of all, appreciate it. A little self-serving, but I think it's relevant to everyone. My name is Scott Clark. We're an AI, Allocate Right. It's an AI-driven wealth.
I know you well.
I know you, Joe. Well, wealth and asset management technology company, but we're really an underlying data science company with financial domain expertise. But my question to you as a panel is, where do you see the greatest potential for rapid advancement of AI being integrated into the wealth and asset management space? I mean, is it in direct indexing, Sean? Is it in portfolio management? Is it in sorting through the chat GPT portion of what people are doing in terms of summarization, custom proposals? Where do you see the most potential for rapid deployment?
Joe, hold on. Go ahead. Alan, go
I just think I'd also run Morgan Stanley's online brokerage in the 90s as the first wireless online brokerage and integration. And I think it's around that. It's around taking all that client data behind the firewall, and being able to talk meaningfully to the client. Because it's ultimately, I really believe, for high-end clients, they want somebody that can sit in front of them, that cares, that understands everything about them. So if you look at like what Larry from Google's family office did, they built this whole ecosystem for the Google founders just so they knew where everything was. In other words, that's what we all are challenged with. Like, where'd that go? Where'd this go? How does that advisor know everything about me? Well, they have a little help, but I think that's where AI is going to make the advisors smarter. It's going to deliver more to their hand, but then they're the ones that deliver and explain face to face.
Thank you. Sean?
The place where I'm really excited about AI is really as an assistant. And what I mean by an assistant, I mean things like summarizing data, summarizing information, giving the advisor the ability to then engage the client. I am incredibly concerned with things like hallucinations. I'm incredibly concerned with black box operations. And I think any place where the AI, you put the AI between you and a client in such a way that the AI is providing information that you yourself don't understand, you're going to lose. But if you can use the AI in a way to augment the things that you do, to make the things that you do faster, that is exactly where those opportunities lie. So, I've talked a lot on the indexing side. I'm an AI skeptic, but in terms of tools to help advisors communicate with clients, I'm an AI optimist.
Now, I would just add one thing. First of all, I just agree with everything that Sean just said, which doesn't always happen.
Does it always happen?
But the other thing I would add in your particular case that I saw in the demos from you is some of the stuff you're doing on the fixed income side. So, obviously fixed income is front and center with a lot of advisors now, and a lot of advisors who came into the business over the last 10 years are not exactly great bond analysts because they didn't have to be. So being able to do complex calculations just by asking AI questions about bond yields and things like that, some of the things you demoed that I saw really impressed me. So I think do more of that as well.
Other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, like big banks like J.P. Morgan, I was there, spent almost 20 years there, and they did a lot of mergers. Bear Stearns, Washington Mutual, Bank of New York, list goes on. Notice they all come with like legacy systems. And do you think there's or do you think companies are maybe looking to just outsource or farm this out to like big tech? Because I don't know how they're going to possibly
Not sure I understand.
keep up with the upgrades. Because technology doesn't stand still. It's constantly upgrading. Something new is always constantly coming out. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts on that was.
Do you guys understand it? I did. Okay.
So you're asking about large firms and their legacy systems, like custodians and things of that nature in the banks?
Yeah, after, when they merge, the company they merge with has a legacy system.
Yeah.
And they probably have a legacy system of their own, and,
So I think the short answer is it depends, right? Some companies, for compliance reasons or concerns about compliance, are not going to outsource, what they think is their most important data. But I think there are certain areas of what you would call legacy systems, like third-party financial planning software, CRM, what have you, that certainly don't have to be in-house. So it's very expensive to get rid of those legacy systems and redo them. But I think a lot of the best firms in the industry, what we've been seeing over the last 5 years, is they're starting to make that investment.
I'm going to be politically incorrect because I did this. Morgan Stanley, we built the online brokerage and then they shut it down because it competed too well with the rest of the firm on the East Coast. And, we were doing everything that they couldn't do on it. And so I came back here for a year and tried to put their different systems together. And what I would just say is run. In other words, go find somebody who's got a new technology. And I'm sorry, but it's a lot of work. And when you're bringing together different broker dealers and different systems, it's a lot of work. And no matter what people tell you, it's not going to happen quickly. So I would just always be wary. It's management's job to tell you it's all good. I would use your own, just think about it yourself. I'm sorry, I'm not with anybody right now, and I'll let it all hang out. So that would be my take.
No. I thought that was terrific. By the way, I agree with you. I've been through that a few times. How about a round of applause to everyone?